Okay, so we're here with Asan for the last of our series of three of AMAs. The first two covered the platform and with Neil, and then we covered the data ETL with Emily. This last AMA is going to cover the outputs of this platform, being the risk metrics themselves. We're going to be talking about what they are. So when this platform goes live, what you'll be able to see on day one, how what those metrics mean as far as their implications on the various DeFi protocols, and then what they mean for people who want to use them. And then we'll scrutinize them a little bit more to show how they're how valuable they can be to the DeFi community. But first, Asan, we have him visiting from Sydney, Australia, and we're recording this ahead of time, so it's not live. But
Hello, everyone.
do you want
to be here?
Do you want to give a short intro on your background?
Absolutely.
2 minutes.
I have 15 years of experience across financial market industry. I started my career in audit, then moved to asset management, specifically in equity research. And then I spent 5 years in trading, starting from money markets and then Forex and rates derivatives. And that was in Eastern Europe. And then I moved to Sydney, where I moved into quantitative analytics space and risk management analytics. Yes, and I spent around 7 years in this field until I moved into crypto, which is super exciting. Yeah, that's a bit about me.
Great, yeah, that's you got a lot of experience. I would say that does that experience, have you seen it translate so far, or do you feel like there are aspects of this industry that that kind of don't have relation to your prior experience?
So it's a good question. So far, it's been just 3 months of my full-time crypto journey. So, short question, I don't know, but markets could be different, but question people ask and pain points that people have are the same. So there is a lot of overlap, and I think having such a diversified experience gives me flexibility, and I really try to be very agile and keep my team very agile as well.
Yeah, so speaking of that experience, when you joined, you made the decision to focus on two specific risk models for our risk terminal, which is the platform that's coming out on the 15th. And you picked value at risk, otherwise known as VAR, and liquidity coverage ratio, or LCR. Can you talk about those two metrics and at a high level what they're composed of, and then also why you picked those two to begin with at Credmark?
The reason being was that these two metrics is the foundation of investment banking, right? So, and it was low-hanging fruit for us because we didn't have to check the validity of the value proposition of these products. It's just a super universal and super useful. So VAR metrics, it stands for value at risk. It basically helps you understand how much you can lose with your position under normal circumstances in a set worst case scenario. And LCR, which stands for liquidity coverage ratio, tells you about how are you positioned in terms of liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
and liquidity profile tells you about the healthiness of the protocol or organization overall. It's one of the fundamental values. And then secondly, it helps you to compare different protocols, and it's previously it wasn't a critical measure, but after GFC it really became.
After what?
After global financial
2008.
crisis. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm using too many acronyms.
It's all right.
Yeah, which are not crypto native, but yeah, basically after global financial crisis, it really became important, like how well are you positioned in terms of liquidity, and LCR manages the coverage of your liquid assets over what potentially can go out of the door in case of stress. So, and usually it's sophisticated investors' money.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up 2008. I was reading a book about fractal geometry and how it pertains to like risk in financial markets. And one of the interesting things was that when people build in traditional finance, when people build these models, they assume that huge black swan events occur once in like 100 years, when in reality those things actually occur more frequently than that. And in crypto, they occur even more frequently than that, right? So if value at risk is supposed to measure how much you could stand to lose given normal market conditions, well, the normal market conditions in crypto means that we see massive downswings twice a year, 3 times a year potentially. And I think one criticism that someone could levy against that model for this industry is that it does not fully consider how volatile crypto is. That it's like a TradFi metric that even in TradFi may not fully be including sort of the potential, black swan event situation.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a
how
good
do you?
point.
How does the model that we're building account for that?
Well, if you're talking about black swan events, right? These events are characterized by unknown event with unknown probability, so that you can't quantify it. And I think the best approach would be like, if you would like to avoid this risk, best approach would be not to do it at all. So
Okay.
basically, or insure it somehow. But insurance would be, of course, very expensive, and it's really about a trade-off, a balance between amount of risk you take and not taking it at all. Because if you don't take the risk, obviously you are not getting any returns, right? Because any return is associated with risk. And there are ways of like managing black swan events, so you can manage them through being more agile and having like teams in place and can address particular things quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like you have to stay in between, if this makes sense.
I think so. I think you're just saying that, you should understand that these things happen in crypto and that you're taking a certain amount of risk inherently just by being in the industry. So
pretty much.
Yeah.
So there is there might be a large loss, but probability of it is small. So if you adjust for probability, it becomes really like low impact event.
Mm.
So would you like to base your business model based on low likely event? Probably not, right? You would more concentrate on like the middle of the distribution, things that happen often. So and in this sense, That's why we are say under normal business circumstances, because we would like to focus on the majority of the distribution of events, if this makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk about, on the 15th when this platform goes live, I believe someone will be able to log in, stake their CMK, and get access to this risk terminal. And what they'll be able to see is, I believe, value at risk and LCR for Aave, correct?
Yeah.
And then soon after that, we'll include the same for Compound. But let's assume that we have this for a multitude of lending protocols. What does a user or a group of users, being a DAO or institution, what do those numbers mean to them? Like, why should they care about those numbers? What decisions can they make with more confidence based on those numbers? And how does it improve the investing experience in DeFi by having access to that real-time data?
The value comes from ability to compare them in terms of liquidity profile, ability to manage liquidity risk. And in this case, you are really comparing apples to apples. And that's what this metric is designed for. Aave manages it better than Compound or any other lending protocol. And the next step would be to go even further and make this metric more precise and look into what are the customers of each protocol? Are they institutional clients or retail clients? How sticky are they with the protocol? If the stress situation happens, would these companies leave straight away, or will stick around for another month because they are more loyal? It really comes down to this concept of loyal customer. Who is a loyal customer? And also it comes down to pricing. How if for example Compound has a better base of loyal customers, and Aave not, then how does it play out in terms of pricing and what better should be priced? So I wouldn't go into too much of a details.
Right.
I'm just saying for now it will be just a comparative metrics. That's where the value comes. But going forward, it will be also a lot of analytics on just on one protocol in isolation. We will focus on that.
Okay, this is a dumb question, but I think it needs to be asked. Why is comparing the value at risk for Aave and Compound more effective than comparing TVL for Aave and Compound? Because I think people would just assume that, if the higher the TVL, the more secure you are. They have more capital to work with in case there is a market downturn. But we know, and I think most people know that that's not the best metric. But can you maybe illustrate why it's a poor way to compare protocols?
I wouldn't say it's poor. It's just coming from different angles. TVL is a very valuable metrics in terms of it tells you about the volume of assets locked in the protocol, whereas VAR is more around how much exposure does the protocol have to market risk volatility on a net basis. And what would help illustrate that is the case with the Cream Finance.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so basically what happened is that there was this flash loan attack, right? So what they did, they just shut down all borrowing and all lending. So it was just the funds were just isolated, and then they said, which was very great from them. They said, we'll reimburse all these funds lost by the clients, but they had to figure out for some time what do they need to do. And during this period they were basically exposed to market risk on all these balances. And market risk really about volatility of market prices, and different tokens have different behavior, right? For example, Dogecoin would be much more volatile than Ethereum, and so on. And yeah, extreme example would be if you are locked for 1 month with if Cream Finance had only Dogecoin in their balance sheet and they are locked for 1 month of holding it and owing it to customers on a net basis, then they are exposed to VAR for 1 month. And we'll help provide this number to sort of understand how much deep into trouble they could be for this holding period. And holding period could be very different. So in banking, it's 1 year. So how much can we lose in an organization in 1 year? So it's a bit of highly theoretical, but we will help to lend this and make it useful for different type of customers that we have.
Great. One last question, and this goes back to the validation of these models. You mentioned that they're like considered industry standard in traditional finance. No one questions them. The inputs are sort of well known. Do those inputs translate to blockchain? Like the inputs to these models, how are you thinking about them such that you can show to someone who's curious that the way we're getting to VAR for Compound or Aave is the right way? If that makes sense, right? Because we're having to transform data off chain and make certain assumptions about how to transform that data, and based on the inputs of value at risk, we're having to say, okay, well, in traditional finance it's X, in crypto it's like X, sub 1 or whatever, right? It's maybe a little different, but we're saying it's equal. So you don't have to get into the details, but why should folks trust that we're making these models the correct way?
That's a very good question, and I would just say that data is top priority for us. You can build a more sophisticated model, best in the world, but if the data is crap, then the output is crap as well. So, and we will be really focusing on fixing the missing data, stale data issues. Data is fragmented, and it has to be. There is a data methodologies designed to fix these kind of issues. I think so. The way we'll get it validated would be we'll be working with the best in the world specialists in this field, approach best practice approaches in this field from traditional banking, and work together with the community, with crypto community, with professional model validators. I have some experience and connections in this field, and this sits perfectly with our long-term goal of building best in the world model validation capability, and bringing this best in the world modelers to our platform. It will be all around standardization of the documentation ways we back test suggested models, and being really transparent about it, and also engaging the community to participate. I'm actually a big fan of creating an open source committee when anyone, any subject matter expert can jump in and and be able to challenge any suggestion we're putting in place.
Great. Yeah, I look forward to that part of this process. Cool. We're going to wrap this up. This will air on Tuesday, December 14th. so one day before the platform goes live. It'll air, and folks can watch it, and then if there are any remaining questions, we can field them in our Discord. So definitely, Asan is ready to answer anything you guys might have. So feel free to lob some questions at him. And I think we'll probably do more AMAs like this on a monthly basis. Still not really sure, but in the new year, we'll definitely have a schedule in place for this. And yeah, until next time, guys, take it easy.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Asan.
Good.